West Virginia Hollow. Peter Hellstrom, Daze Wilderness, West Virginia, 2015. The forest was my proving ground, a vast, untamed expanse where I'd forged my soul through 2 decades of search and rescue labor. My name is Peter Hellstrom, and in October 2015, at 38, I carried the weight of that life in every step, knees creaking from a fall 3 years prior that shattered cartilage against unforgiving rock, a spine that groaned under the strain of a pack laden with rope, flares, and first aid, and eyes that had traced too many trails to their grim ends. I served the United States Forest Service in West Virginia, where the Daze Wilderness sprawled like a deceitful Eden, sweeping meadows of golden grass rippling under the wind, eerie boulder fields jutting like the bones of some buried giant, gnarled spruce trees clawing at the sky with twisted limbs, all framed by a beauty so pristine it hid its treachery. That week, the sky hung low and oppressive, a gray shroud that leached color from the world, casting the landscape in muted tones of ash and shadow. The wind bit sharp against my cheeks, carrying the faint tang of damp earth and pine, a reminder of the wild's indifference. We'd been combing the trails for 7 days, searching for Kyle Anders, a 19-year-old college kid who'd vanished into this labyrinth. His friends, 3 wiry boys with city-soft hands, said he'd wandered off after an argument, craving space, yearning to see the stars unspoiled by light pollution. A reckless choice in a place notorious for its capricious weather, where fog could swallow a man whole and trails twisted back on themselves like a predator's snare. We'd found scraps, a crushed water bottle, its plastic crumpled under some fleeting pressure, a glove snagged on a bramble, threads fraying into the wind, but nothing substantial, no footprint or cry to guide us. The day was waning, sunlight bleeding into an awkward gray that blurred shadows into the underbrush, softening the edges of reality until the forest felt like a dream teetering on nightmare. My radio crackled to life, Jenna's voice cutting through. Another ranger, her tone clipped with fatigue. She'd spotted something a mile northeast of our search grid, a flicker of color against the monotone wild. I volunteered, needing the stretch of my legs, the solitude away from the group's restless chatter, their voices a dull hum against my fraying nerves. The trail plunged into an overgrown patch of forest, dense with thorns and tangled vines that snagged at my pants, the air thick with the scent of wet moss and decay. It was quieter than it should have been. No birds trilled from the canopy, no leaves rustled under the feet of squirrels or deer, just the steady crunch of my boots against damp earth, a sound that echoed too loudly in the stillness. I hate when the woods go quiet like that. It's as if nature itself pauses, holding its breath, watching with unseen eyes. 50 feet off the path, a red flannel shirt dangled in a thorn bush, its fabric shredded, not merely caught, but torn apart with a violence that spoke of intent. Dried blood crusted the edges, a dark, rusty stain that gleamed faintly in the dim light. My pulse quickened, a sharp thud against my ribs. I fumbled for my radio, calling Jenna, but static swallowed her response, the ridge's spotty reception worsening with every step higher. I muttered a curse about government-issued junk and edged closer, the shirt's tatters swaying faintly in the breeze. Up close, the damage was worse. Rents in the fabric jagged and deep, as if claws had raked through it with surgical fury. Then I saw the footprints, fresh, pressed deep into the wet soil, longer and broader than Kyle's size 9 boots from the profile we'd been given. The toes clawed inward, unnatural, too deliberate for a bear, the stride upright and measured. My mind raced. Bear tracks don't walk like that, don't carry that weight of purpose. I followed, gut twisting with a primal urge to turn back, duty chaining my feet forward. The trail wove through spruce and rock, the air growing heavier, laden with the musk of something old and earthy. 100 yards in, the prints halted near a cluster of boulders, moss-covered slabs stacked haphazardly, like an ancient shrine raised by hands long forgotten. Kyle's backpack lay slashed open at their base, its contents strewn across the dirt. A flashlight, its lens cracked, a half-eaten protein bar, wrapper glinting silver, a notebook, its pages curling from dampness. I knelt, flipping it open. Sketches of trees and constellations filled the early pages, precise and boyish. Then the writing turned frantic, ink smeared. It watches at night. Not a bear. Tall, too tall. I don't think it wants me to leave. A branch snapped, sharp, close, a crack that jolted my spine. My hand flew to my belt, then froze. I'd left my sidearm in the truck, a careless habit born of routine. Knife and whistle gripped tight. I backed against a boulder, its cold surface leaching through my jacket. The air thickened, heavy with rot and wet earth, a storm's promise pressing down. Then I saw it. A flicker at first, a trick of light weaving between the trees, blending with bark and shadow, until it resolved into something real, towering 7 or 8 feet. Wiry yet sinewy, its dark skin mottled like tree bark, patches of moss and lichen clinging to its frame, limbs too long, bending at angles that defied bone and muscle. Its head tilted, elongated and canine, maw stretching wide with jagged teeth as it sized me up, a predator's curiosity glinting in its unseen eyes. The stench hit, decay and soil, a grave freshly turned. My legs screamed to run, but I froze, hoping stillness might render me invisible. It lunged 30 feet to 10 in a heartbeat, claws swiping as I scrambled back, crashing against stone, breath knocked from my lungs. I slashed wildly with my knife, blade biting its arm. Dark, tar-like blood oozed, thick and slow, and it let out a noise. A guttural snarl melded with a scream, vibrating through my chest. The distraction bought me seconds. I bolted, crashing through thorns that tore at my skin, adrenaline drowning sense of direction. It pursued, each step a thunderclap shaking the earth, branches snapping in its wake. My foot caught a root, ankle twisting with a spike of pain, and I sprawled, dirt grinding into my palms. A clearing glowed ahead, search party flashlights piercing the dusk. I screamed, waving, voice raw, but it burst through, feral and unrelenting. Richie turned, face paling. One swipe felled him, blood pooling around his head as it tore into him with mechanical efficiency, flesh rending under claws. Jenna grabbed my arm, half dragging me to the trucks, its kill left crouching over Richie like a vulture. Dawn brought rangers and a deputy. They found Richie's remains, Kyle's under leaves and rocks, wounds inconclusive, the coroner said, though his notebook slipped back to me through Jenna's quiet hands. Reports blamed a rogue bear, but I dug deeper. Old accounts from the 1900s whispered of tall things in these woods, shadows that watched, patterns of silence and slaughter. I resigned a month later, Kyle's sketch, jagged teeth, too tall frame, etched into the notebook on my shelf, a relic of a forest that ran out of patience. The Wyoming Abyss. Ransom Corbin, Absaroka Range, Wyoming, 2007. The wild was my refuge, 8 years with the Forest Service weaving my life into Wyoming's trails, educating hikers, guiding searches, finding peace in the steady crunch of boots on pine needles. My name is Ransom Corbin, and in 2007, the Absaroka Range near Shoshone National Forest turned that sanctuary into a crucible of dread. It began with a call. Joel Atkins, a 52-year-old hunter, vanished 6 miles deep, split from Roy and Curtis to scout a ridge. They'd waited a day, then hiked out, scratched faces and bloodshot eyes confessing terror beyond a lost friend. At the ranger station, Curtis swore a bear prowled their camp, growls humming in their ribs. Roy pointed to torn bark 12 feet up, tracks too strange for ursine paws, his phone's blurry photos useless in the glare. I hit the trail late afternoon, .45 sidearm holstered, a comfort more for noise than bullets, pack heavy with radio, water, first aid. The woods loomed quiet, no bird song or squirrel chatter, just my boots on dry leaves and the creak of swaying pines, their scent sharp in the cooling air. Roy's marker, a red rag, guided me to their camp. Tents pitched, fire pit cold, dirt kicked over embers in haste. Tracks led out, huge, clawed, wolf-like but dinner plate wide, strides too long, vanishing into a thicket. A sane man would have radioed for backup, but Joel's minutes were ticking. I followed, pines swallowing the light, ground littered with rocks and fallen branches. An hour in, The terrain turned brutal. Torn earth, bloodied elk fur snagged on bushes, bones splintered like glass, the kill violent and precise. A chuffing sound, low, like bellows forcing air, prickled my neck, raising hairs beneath my collar. I drew my sidearm, crept forward, heart pounding in my teeth. 20 feet away, it hunched over another elk, coarse black fur matted with gore, elongated snout snapping bones, claws gleaming in the dimness. A nightmare hybrid, wolf and boar melded into something grotesque. It stood on hind legs, arms too long, hands clawed and deliberate. It turned, blood dripping from its maw, eyes glinting with primal knowing, and lunged faster than its bulk should allow. I fired twice, shots deafening, hitting its shoulder. It recoiled, barking sharp and pained, then fled into the trees. Shaking, I scanned the silence. Only a blood trail remained, dark and thick, leading deeper. Joel's fate gnawed at me. I followed, the trail winding to a rocky outcrop, a cave yawning at its base. The stench hit, rot and ammonia, burning my throat. My flashlight swept inside. Bones littered the floor, animal and human, scraps of clothing hanging like trophies. Joel slumped at the back, torso shredded, face frozen in terror, hunting knife clutched in vain. A chuff echoed behind me. I spun, beam catching it, black ichor oozing from its wound, unfazed. My clip emptied into its chest. It barely flinched. A rock to its snout staggered it, buying my sprint to the station. Roy and Curtis waited, pale as I gasped out the tale. A search team found the cave empty. Bones, blood, Joel gone, swallowed by the forest. Reports said bear. I dug into legends, finding the Shunka war akin. A mythic predator, vengeance, or guardian. Its chuff haunts me still. The Smoky Mountain Vale. Kenton Abshire, Great Smoky Mountains, Tennessee, North Carolina, 1998. Steady was my anchor. 9 years in the Great Smoky Mountains forging nerves of steel against the wild's caprice. My name is Kenton Abshire, and in 1998, a call appended that calm. Troy Marchant, missing near Elkmont, his friends pale and silent at the trailhead. They spoke of shouts fading to nothing, a shape in the trees, their eyes darting as if Troy might emerge. I hiked in, dense canopy blotting sunlight, the air thick with leaf mold and pine, birdsong fading to an oppressive hush. 2 miles in, a broken branch dangled like a trap, a trail of disturbed leaves veering off path, subtle, deliberate. Scraps of blue fabric snagged branches, frayed and dirty, leading to an old campsite, rusted tent poles jutting like bones, a decaying cooler half buried. A hiking boot lay askew, laces undone, the acrid stench of rot curling from it. Troy sprawled nearby, twisted in the underbrush, gashes clawing his torso, flies droning over glistening tendons, neck torn to wet ropes. I cataloged it, training overriding nausea, snapping photos with trembling hands. A rustle spun me. 50 feet out, a hairy, spider-limbed thing darted behind a tree, coarse and thin, moving jerky and wrong. My revolver barked, grazing its shoulder. It screeched, a sound that clawed my ears, and gave chase, snapping branches in relentless pursuit. I fired again, hitting its chest, legs burning as I reached my truck, gravel spraying as I fled. Troy's body vanished by dawn, only scraps remaining. Reports said bear, but Cherokee tales of the long-limbed stalker whispered of dusk hunters dragging prey deep. I locked my notes away, never returning. The Alaskan Fringe. Colin DeWitt, Wrangell St. Elias National Park, Alaska, 2018. 10 years in Alaska's wilds taught me its cold indifference. My name is Colin DeWitt, and in 2018, near Wrangell St. Elias, 3 hikers vanished by a glacier. Jorge, my partner, and I trekked in, finding Devin Thorne's torn chest against a tree, surgical precise, then the couple, wounds too clean for chance. First snagged on branches, claw marks gouged rock, led to a shredded tent. It stood 7 feet, lean and furred, gnawing a kill, wolf jaw too wide, limbs fluid and wrong. My flare startled it. We dragged the bodies back, its shadow retreating into the trees. The site emptied. Reports said unknown predator, but Athabascan tales of the Colette spoke of death's harbinger stalking tragedy's wake. The Washington Depths. Elias Reading, North Cascades National Park, Washington, 2013. The forest was my lifeblood, a decade rejecting the slow death of desks. My name is Elias Reading, and in 2013, 3 college kids vanished near Thornton Lake. Mason and I found a shredded backpack, then a bloodless body, gashes cauterized, unnatural. A clicking sound, deep, rhythmic, stalked us, growing closer. It struck Mason, fur wet and matted, claws slashing his chest. Flares drove it back. He died by the lake, the 3rd kid stuffed in a tree, ribs splayed. Reports said animal. Old logs spoke of a wendigo-like demon, its clicking a relentless echo in my nights. The Idaho Verge. Conrad Lay, Sawtooth National Forest, Idaho, 2007. 12 years in Idaho's backcountry hardened me to its trials. My name is Conrad Lay, and in 2007, siblings vanished in hell-roaring canyon. A torn backpack, straps shredded, led to a mangled hiker, then a cave. Bones, a nest of moss and cloth, a gray-skinned giant with wolf snout and jagged teeth. Bear spray stung it. A branch pierced its side, claws raking my chest. A rock to its head freed me to back up. The cave emptied, reports said animal, but tales of the skin wolf hinted at a relic guarding its wild, its blood on my shirt a silent vow. The Alaskan Abyss Redux. Callum Weatherby, Wrangell St. Elias National Park, Alaska, 2013. 5 years in Alaska's expanse taught me nature's apathy. My name is Callum Weatherby, and in 2013, Franklin Dodd vanished in the Clan Rangel corridor. With Lisa, Dan, and Joe, we found his slashed pack, then his gnawed body between boulders, gouges brutal, efficient. Tracks, clawed, wide, led to an 8-foot horror, fur matted, claws gleaming. It swatted Joe, slashed Dan. A branch and rock slowed it, watching as we fled. Franklin's body lingered, tracks circling. Reports said bear, but tales of the long shadow spoke of a hunter in the dusk, its silhouette a dare. From West Virginia's hollows to Alaska's abyss, the wild guards its secrets. Claw marks, bloodless wounds, bones piled in ritual dread. Could you tread these paths, hearing clicks or chuffs in the twilight? Would you stake your solitude where shadows stretch too long? Knowing what waits, the forbidden excavation unearths these nightmares, daring you to listen.